If you have employees of any kind, chances are at some point you will either have to fire somebody or someone will voluntarily leave to go pursue another opportunity. And it is in those moments how you handle that is paramount to the success of your business or, venture, right? Now, what do I mean by this? Well, let's take something like firing, right? Regardless of what the reasoning is, if you employ radical candor, which is care deeply, but also be honest and direct, right? That will signal to the rest of your employees that you actually value them, right? Because it's not about really the person that is leaving, whether they're being fired or voluntarily going to something else, right? If you, A, shit talk them, B, if it's handled messy and there's grievances, then it sends that signal to the rest of the employees of like, oh, if I ever want to leave or if I'm ever fired, I'm going to be treated in that same way. And that will dictate how they kind of proceed and work within the company moving forward, even if they stay, right? It's not about like, oh, they'll see this and they'll be like, oh, okay, well, now I'm going to quit. No, it doesn't have to be that. But there will be a shift in their attitude, their morale towards the negative. And you don't want that, right? As someone who's been in a position where I have had to let people go or people have left, I try to keep this top of mind. And I've also been in those situations. In fact, there was one instance at a job that I worked at where I essentially left. And, because of my leaving, the company essentially tried to erase that I ever worked there. And people saw this and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. We know how much value this person, brought to this place. And, the whole mantra of this place was to espouse, root for everyone's success and so forth. And yet the person that gave his blood, sweat, and tears to this place, they just erased them out of history. So what does that mean for me? Like, it just signaled they don't actually really care about me, right? It's a very transactional thing. So you have to be very careful in these things of how you handle it. And not just from like worry about the legal side of it. No, I mean, I use the word radical candor, it's a book by Kim Scott, but, in it, the principle is to have true empathy towards a person and not just do it because, again, for legal reasons or like, okay, now I've put this thing in your brain where you have to be conscious of how the other employees see this. So doing it in such a way where, they're kind of kept out of it and it's all a mystery, and this is why Hollywood has like all these NDAs and so forth. When in reality, like if things are handled well, right? Whether someone's leaving, but especially if they're being fired for whatever reason, right? There's a way to handle this with humility. And most bosses just don't. And so it is for those reasons that I, urge you to break that tradition, if you will, and be the opposite, right? To, regardless of who comes and goes, to care about them. And even if they leave, to still root for them, right? In fact, there's a great episode from the Tim Ferriss show where CEO coach Matt Mochary talks about this sort of very thing. The episode itself is quite long. It's over 2 hours. But what I love about the Tim Ferriss show, and I'll link to it, is, he kind of lays out where the bits are. And so you can find this within that interview. But again, these, whether it's Kim Scott's book, Radical Candor, or listening to that podcast episode, these are all ideas that I'm pulling from and, infusing it with my own experience of seeing this stuff, right? And I've also witnessed it in other people, right? So it's not just my own experiences, but people I know and so forth. So it might sound like, if you're a boss out there, it might sound, just like more work, which it is, but the ROI on it is a lot better than the opposite, right? by short shrifting it and, just trying to move on, it's not going to go the way you hope, right? And so oftentimes, that is my big sort of mantra is, if you just put in the work and actually develop relationships and so forth, I'm always in it for the long haul, and then the short term, right? And part of that is, a lot of times, like, people try to, here's the opposite, right? People hire people and they're not right for the position. And they're like, okay, we'll just get rid of them and so forth. Well, the turnover of that is actually a lot more costly, right? As opposed to creating loyalty, right? And so it goes to that idea, if someone goes and they're, for lack of a better term, mistreated, other employees take note of that. And then there will be that turnover, and now you're dealing with this mess. So you don't want that. So for all those reasons, just treat whoever comes and goes with humility, and you will have that much better success overall, right? So thank you for taking time to tune in. I hope this helps. Feel free to comment down below with any questions or your own opinions. Bye.